This is Leafs Morning Take with Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill.
Now we've got a fight started here right off the bat with Rosehill.
30 minutes of live, nonstop Leafs talk starts now.
What's going on, everybody? Who's pumped for Game 4 tonight? Can you believe it? The Maple Leafs up 2-1 in the series after an OT thriller on Saturday, presented by Botano and Skip. It's the Monday edition of Leafs Morning Take. Nick Alberga with you. Jay Rosehill will be by, as you can see, not here today, back in the saddle tomorrow, but he'll be by in about 5 minutes from now with another rousing installment of 3 Hits with Rosey. Those have been on fire, so can't wait to see what Rosey had to say leading up to Game 4 tonight from Amalie Arena. Remember to subscribe, tap that like button, leave us a review wherever you're checking us out at the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube. Once again, at the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube. If you're watching right now and are not subscribed, what in the world are you doing? At the Leafs Nation 401, subscribe and get our interviews, our reels, everything we do on a daily basis will be available at the Leafs Nation 401. Additionally, we're available wherever you find your podcast. So just search Leafs Morning Take. You'll be able to find us up there. And also, don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com for the very latest on all things Toronto Maple Leafs. I write there periodically. I'll have a pregame up in about an hour from now. So check that out. Also, a postgame report coming up tonight after Game 4 between the Leafs and Lightning. Thoughts, comments, questions, or concerns? I applaud everybody who's in the chat already, getting hot and ready for the big one tonight, getting their remarks in as well, their comments in on Game 3 the other night. I'm still buzzing. I was at Real Sports in Toronto, man. That place was off. It was like, I don't have any other way to describe just sort of the atmosphere, which is really, really cool, right? You're not accustomed to seeing that. And you're not accustomed to seeing the Leafs win those type of games. So when they do, all hell's going to raise loose. And it certainly did on Saturday, I can tell you firmly. In Toronto, it was a fun night for yours truly. Should mention as well, coming up in about 10 minutes from now, Derek Lalonde, the head coach of the Detroit Red Wings, will be by. Of course, a former assistant, I believe, for 4 seasons with the Lightning. So he's pretty much been with this dynasty. I think it's so curious that he's now doing some panel work for Sportsnet. Has been tremendous through the Stanley Cup playoffs here in the first round. And I think will offer a unique perspective into maybe what's happening behind the scenes, not only in Tampa, obviously, with his close, buddies and friends out there. Of course, he's now with Detroit, but also from the Toronto perspective. It's a major, major swing game coming up tonight, Game 4. So Derek Lalonde's coming up in about 10 minutes, Jay Rosehill in about 5. But for now, let's get over the boards. All right, so I don't want to run too deeply into Saturday night. Of course, we're getting set for Game 4, but a couple things. Just what a thrilling game. I can't remember the last time the Leafs goalied a team in the Stanley Cup playoffs. You heard me right. It's pretty incredible. And Ilya Samsonov, I thought, for bits and pieces of that game, stood on his head, made the saves in OT, made those big saves when it mattered. Obviously the Leafs go up in that game. Tampa storms back. They take the lead on the Radish goal, and you're like, oh, no, here we go again. But, hey, folks, this is why you go out there. This is why you pick up Luke Schenn. Matthew Knies has been an unbelievable addition to this team in the small sample size, and Ryan O'Reilly. Can you say anything else? And just, maybe it's a testament to Ryan O'Reilly, what he meant to that St. Louis Blues team, but I'm sure you all checked out social media after the game. There's a reason why some of the former teammates of Ryan O'Reilly in St. Louis said, oh, we're not surprised. David Perron among them, of course, now with Detroit, and Derek Lalonde is coming up now with Detroit. And he went out of his way on Twitter to say, something to the effect, I'm not really, really shocked. Like, this is why you get a guy like Ryan O'Reilly. He is such a gamer. That was such a big-time goal. And then on top of that, the clean face-off win. I think everybody and their mother was expecting that game to go to double OT. And, of course, Morgan Rielly. What better to have an image of Morgan Rielly with like bloody tissue and nose, bleeding still a bit, put the puck on net, and he scores the goal. And, we've been saying this for like a month now, how Morgan Rielly, believe it or not, could be a big-time X factor in this series. And so far, through 3 games, he has been. And when he does this, you sort of forget what happens in the regular season, right? We always like to talk about the reverse, where it's like the regular season means nothing. And now suddenly the regular season meant everything for Morgan Rielly. He was not good in the regular season, but it's been a different story in the last 2 Stanley Cup playoffs. Last year, of course, 6 points in 7 games. This time around, he has 5 points so far in the series, and of course, none bigger than the game winner on Saturday. So I wanted to give some props to him. Some props, again, to Ilya Samsonov for shutting the door. Like, that's a Hall of Famer, a future Hall of Famer. He's playing on the other side of the rink. And I think to this point, again, we're still early, and I got to be careful what I say here, but Samsonov has outplayed Andrei Vasilevsky. And I was curious to find out the Leafs in 10 playoff games since Game 1 last year have scored 3 or more goals on Andrei Vasilevsky in 9 of those 10 games. Just think about that and think about the illustrious history and the rich history of Andrei Vasilevsky in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And again, anything's possible. We know the tradition. He gets better and better as the series goes on, and that's why I think it's so pivotal for the Maple Leafs to get in his grill and continue to make things, very, very difficult for him. The last thing I want to say is the Stamkos and Matthews little kerfuffle. I won't call it a fight. I know they got 5, but regardless of how you feel about Austin Matthews, should he have dropped the gloves? I still think that can be a galvanizing moment in this series for the Maple Leafs and the team and the fan base. I, for one, watching it live, I didn't even think about that. I said, my goodness, this is incredible. We're in the third period. Austin Matthews sticking up. Things got out of hand there. I think in real time, you watch that Morgan Riley hit, you're like, oh, damn, as you see on your screen right there. But out of nowhere, they got dragged into the fight. And we always talk about guys like Luke Shen and Mark Giordano and how they can rip a team through the mud and say, hey, we're doing this tonight. And I feel like that's exactly what's happened through 3 games of this series where Austin Matthews like, enough of this shit. And he gets in a bit of a wrestling war there with Steven Stamkos, who, 1 for 1, that's probably a better trade for Tampa than it is Toronto. Having said that, I had no problems with it. It is what it is. I'm not going to get into the root of was it a scrap or not. I had a bunch of people texting me after because I tweeted right away. I was fired up. I tweeted right away. I'm like, give Matthews the captaincy, taking nothing away from John Tavares. But I was fired up, and I do think it could be a galvanizing moment in this series, and we'll see moving forward to Game 4 coming up tonight. So again, Derek Lalonde's coming up in about 5, but for now, we got to hear from the man, the myth, the legend himself, Jay Rosehill. 3 hits with Rosey.
Oh, baby, it's game day already. It is surprising how fast that day off in between goes in the playoffs. We're playing again, so you better have a short memory about the stuff you didn't like last game, and you better gather up everything you did like and apply it to the game tonight. Do what you did in Game 2. We need a stranglehold on this series. We want it. Good teams win 2 in a row. And if you keep switch hitting wins with the team, you're going to find yourself in Game 7. We've been there before, and we know it's a coin flip. It's a crapshoot. Good teams win 2 in a row. You didn't have your best stuff last game, and you got the win. That's a huge accomplishment. Now bring your best stuff tonight and get another win and take a stranglehold on this series. This is big. We want that. That being said, it's nice not to be do or die, because if we do happen to not bring our best stuff or something happens, at the end of the day, the worst thing that can happen is a split. We've put ourselves in that position. It's a good place to be. We're in the driver's seat. We want to take a stranglehold. I want to touch on that melee after, that incident the other night. So Morgan Riley and Brayden Point are going into the boards together. They engage each other as they do. They're jostling for position, who's going to touch first, and they engage. And it was more Point that kind of engaged too. And then they're going a million miles an hour. He loses his footing and he smashes into the boards. It's a bad look. It's always scary. You're wondering if that guy's leg's going to be on the other side of his body. You want to see him get up and not be hurt. Looked like he was. Good thing he wasn't. That's a good thing. So he gets up and he's done. You can understand Tampa's reaction, though. They're going to come out and they're jumping everyone and they're going, man, did that look bad? It always does look bad. But when you look at it, Morgan Riley didn't do a single thing as a defenseman that would warrant anything that's dirty or awful. It's just a hockey play where 2 guys are going back a million miles an hour. A guy loses his footing. You're hitting those boards hard and fast, and it's always a little bit scary. That being said, with the bit of a melee that happened, when's the last time you saw a superstar just getting punched in the face bare knuckle? There's a big difference between punching a guy with your glove on and punching a guy bare knuckle. And Stammer is just throwing bombs and landing them right on Austin Matthews. I like to put the shoe on the other foot and say, well, what if it was the other way around? And let's say Ryan O'Reilly is punching Kucherov in the face, gloves are off, and just starts throwing bombs at him because something happened in the corner with the defenseman. It would probably be talked about pretty heavily. On the other hand, I think Kucherov would probably handle it a little bit better than Austin did, but I don't know. He's taken so much heat for it. Where do you think Austin would learn to fight? Do you think he played Junior B in Saskatchewan? Because he didn't. Do you think he grew up religiously watching Rock'em Sock'em videos? Because he didn't. He's of a different generation. And to be honest with you, Stamkos has got a lot of old school in him. He's a veteran. He's been around the block. I know it seems like he just got drafted, but he's of a different generation than Matthews is. And it would have been wicked if Matthews handled himself better. You've seen it 100 times, man. You drop your gloves off and you bear hug him, you wrestle him, you fall to the ice, do something. other than that, whatever that was that you did, I wish he had a little bit more jam. But I mean, people are rinsing him. Where do you think he would have learned to? I guess that's a hint for some of the tough guys on the team to take him under his wing and say, if you ever get in a jam, maybe try this next time. I thought we were going to have a short memory about all this stuff, though. We got a game tonight. Forget about that stuff. Move forward. Whatever you did in game 2, do it again tonight. We got a game. Let's go.
Gotta love the heat there from Jay Rosehill. And here's an idea for maybe an off-season maybe clip to put together. Austin Matthews and Jay Rosehill, and Rosie teaches him how to fight. I think that would do wonders on social media. Brought to you by our new friends over at Skip. We're happy to tell you about Mitch's Dishes by Skip. Using the promo code TLN15, that's TLN15 on the Skip the Dishes app. You get $15 off when you spend $30 or more on Mitch's Dishes. Again, TLN15 is the promo code. Please note that this offer is exclusive to Skip. Additionally, a portion of the proceeds will be donated to the Marner Assist Fund to combat food insecurity. Skip is currently serving up game time eats across the GTA and Ontario in the likes of Brampton, Guelph, Kitchener, Toronto, Oshawa, and Waterloo, among other great places. If Mitch likes it, it's got to be great.
Did somebody say Skip?
Yes, somebody did say Skip, and somebody did say Derek Lalonde. So happy to bring in the head coach of the Detroit Red Wings, doing fantastic work, by the way, on the Sportsnet panel. What's going on, Derek? How are you, bud?
I'm good, thank you. It's been quite an experience so far. I've enjoyed it.
You got to tell me, how did this opportunity come about? Because he sort of just popped up in game 1. Everybody's like, holy smokes, former Lightning assistant, and now he's on my screen. But you're doing great work, man.
Well, it's just funny getting some of the Toronto, like, who in the heck is this guy? And obviously all the natural references, which I've lived my whole life, which I think are hilarious and they're real, the Gru's of the world, and which is pretty funny. No, the guy I use as an agent, who's been obviously a really good friend and very helpful over the years, out of the blue called me about a week left in the season. It's like he got a phone call from Sportsnet. Obviously, the connection I have living this series, being part of this series, spending 4 years on the Tampa staff, you can see the obvious connection. And I never really thought about it. And then when I thought more into it, I'm like, I'm watching the playoffs anyways. I dig into it. This is how I learned. Even our staff, everyone on our hockey ops staff takes a series that we'll watch in depth and then report back just to grow and learn on. And the timing made sense. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. I'm extremely glad I did. It's been an unbelievable experience. I'm a little, someone asked me the other day, would you ever do this? I said, I'm very happy with coaching. I just assumed these guys went to happy hour and then showed up, made up some lines, a couple cliches, and then went to bed. But these guys are detailed. They work hard. I've learned a lot from them also. So it's been a great experience.
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to say that too, obviously having worked at Sportsnet like I have, like you don't know the professionalism behind the scenes, the preparation that goes into every broadcast. And like my brother even texted me today. He's like, man, Kevin Bieksa telegraphed that entire Oilers game, but like they know what they're doing, like, right? Like it's pretty impeccable what they do behind the scenes there.
It's amazing, and they are that talented. And even everyone I saw, I mean, last night, Kevin, he predicted the first penalty they took. He's like, go ozone time, get grinding, and he's like, there's Edler, he's tired, and literally 15 seconds later, he took that holding call. So they are a talented group. They're a detailed group. They're organized. I've always been impressed watching them, and now you can see why they're that good. So it's very impressive from the outside.
What's it like been watching your old team, right? You've been in that fight for so many years. You're now with Detroit. I might add too, like I play a lot of fantasy hockey. I watch a ton of hockey. You guys had Tampa's number this season, man. You played them well every time out. It seems like you know something there, but
I wish it was that. I wish it was that easy. We actually did well. Went 2-2 versus Toronto. We went 2-2 versus Tampa, and I just think that's a good sign from our guys. So those are elite teams. Those are two of the top 4 or 5 teams in the league. This has been interesting. I didn't know how I'd feel going into this. I'm not going to lie. It's human nature. I'm still a little emotionally attached to Tampa. Obviously, I would never come off as that. But, you go through those relationships with the coaches, even the players, very tight with many of them. Obviously, we won a lot of hockey there, went through a lot there. But at the same time, I've got a ton of respect for what Sheldon Keefe and his staff have done over the last 4 years. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen this team grow into a more mature team. playing the right way, winning habits. I've referenced before the first game of the year we played Toronto and how depleted their D lineup was. And they came in, and yes, Matthews scored a goal, Marner scored a goal, but they literally managed their game so well. They sat on their 1-goal lead. They didn't turn pucks over. They were eating pucks, blocking pucks. And I left that game frustrated because I felt it was a game we could have won with the Red Wings. But I left that game saying this team's ready to win. And again, I know that staff is in a very fishbowl media. I get it. It's a passionate fan base. But you have to trust me. I look at it from a coach perspective, and that coaching staff has done a really good job getting this team to where they're at.
What have you made of the brewing gamesmanship behind the scenes and the back and forth, the media going back and forth with John Cooper and Sheldon Keefe since Game 3?
I think that's part of it. I think it's both really smart coaches. A lot of times coaches are speaking to their players through the media. There is a little gamesmanship in it. I thought they've handled it both very well. I can speak of dealing with John Cooper, and he just has an unbelievable way about himself, that emotional intelligence. He just, we talk about being a quiet confidence, and even just the way he handled, you can see, his superstar ends up in the corner and looks ugly. He's got 2 other superstars in the middle of a melee, and you can just see he never flinched, and just see the quiet confidence. And even when you see the call made, and it goes from a potential 5-minute major to now Tampa's on the penalty kill, you can see him looking down, and he even looked at his assistant to the right, Jeff Blasser. He's like, yep, I can see that. And just has a presence about him, understanding it. And he exudes that quiet confidence through his group. And that's why they've had so much success they've had.
Yeah, the one thing I learned about John Cooper a couple of years back, he chews the same piece of double bubble the entire game. I don't know if it's still the same, but that's some lunatic stuff right there, man.
He's got a jaw that is going to last himself. That would be the last thing that goes on him, is that jaw for sure.
So what have you been, there's so many amazing storylines in this series, but I wanted to touch on Matthew Nyes just because, coming off a year in Detroit, a lot of young players that you're maturing on that roster. How impressed have you been with Matthew Nyes? Obviously a short sample size in the league, but he's looked really, really strong in such an amazing and epic setting, right?
Yeah, I've been very impressed. I'm not surprised. I'm a little familiar with him, just his college background, very tight with the Minnesota staff, and watching him coming up through USA Hockey with the World Championships. And, as a coach, there's a separation between management and coach, but there's no doubt I would hint, if there's any way, because we are obviously going to be sellers with some really nice assets there. If there's any way Nyes could be part of our future, I would love that. So I think that's how I thought of him. And I give the management group of Toronto credit. Obviously they're in a window to win now. They're trying to win now, but they stated from the get-go, everything's available except Nyes. And obviously you can see why. And he made immediate impact in this series. And I think he's going to be a really nice player for a long time.
So Michael Bunting's the other conversation to be had here, right? You sort of forget it's been in the rear view since game 1. He gets suspended for 3 games. If you're Sheldon Keefe, how much does this hinge upon what happens in game 4? Is he an automatic to come back in this lineup, in your opinion?
Yeah, great question. We were actually talking about that in the studio. I'm not in that room. I don't understand the relationship between Sheldon and Michael. I will say this, it's obviously strong, just the play Michael has done. And I know, he made a hit there that put himself in a bad situation, but I thought he was controlling his emotions towards the end of the year fairly well. So I don't know that relationship, and I would assume, watching how successful he has been and the player he's been for him, there's a lot of trust there. So I'd be surprised if he's not back in the mix. He's an important part of that team. But that's ultimately Sheldon have that best feel. And again, he's been pushing a lot of the correct buttons over the last few years. I'm sure he'll get that one right also.
And that's a big time question to be asked following game 4 tonight. I want to ask you as well. So we know game 4 happens tonight. Then there's an extra day off. Who do you think that benefits more in this series, having the extra day off between game 4 and 5?
Yeah, probably the losing team in Tampa, but really, both these teams and it's experienced in different ways. I know obviously Tampa's been through 11 straight wins. Played 13 series in such a small window of time. But I think Toronto has some experience in their own way. I know they've come on the bad end of things, but you can just see even the way they talk in the media, even their demeanor between games in this series. It's a mature group and they're ready to win, and I believe that. I'm not saying they're going to win this series, but this group is ready to win, and I think that speaks volumes about the group and the coaching staff. So I really don't think there's much of an advantage because both teams are mature groups, but probably the team that came off that tough loss get a little more time to regroup.
I wanted to ask you just to wrap as well about Luke Schenn. We're sort of partial on this podcast. So my co-host Jay Rosehill, who's not here today, actually played with Schenner and he's good buddies with him. We've had him on the podcast a couple of times and just speaks the world of him. And then I interviewed him. I'm like, this guy's an absolute gem. What was it like to work with Luke Schenn? And is everything they say about him true?
Absolutely. It was absolute treats. And I think to Jay's example, you almost have to be in the room to just understand and what he brings. I know I did the one piece there on what he brought in that New York Islanders series. You talk about the gamesmanship, and that's real. And he'll bring that same gamesmanship. Even after that incident, I know he came to the end of the bench and he was policing it, not in a wrong way. He wasn't, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to do this. He was talking it through, and he was literally like, hey, it wasn't even a bad hit. And he was sticking up for his teammates, but just doing it the right way. He just has an uncanny feel for it. But I've been impressed with his play. He had a lot of minutes in overtime. He had 3 unbelievable clean breakouts, and those type of plays build, and it had helped them get to that moment in the end where Riley was able to score on a face-off goal through a little bit of traffic there. So you can see he's brought a lot on the ice, but his value on the big picture and what he brings a team, you almost have to experience it to understand it. And I was fortunate enough to do that. Was able to win 2 Stanley Cups with Luke, and I thought a really good pickup by the Toronto Maple Leafs.
It really is incredible when you just, tying a bow on this, you look back at game 3, the 3 most composed players on the ice for OT, in my opinion, Luke Schenn, Matthew Knies, and Ilya Samsonov. It doesn't make much sense, but it doesn't matter who scores that big time goal for you, right?
100%. And teams got to go through these moments. I can't tell you how many times with all that success we had in Tampa where we stole games because of a goaltending or a play by a special player. That's how you get through these series. You got to perform to your highest, which they did in game 2. They found a way to steal one in game 3. And if they can get their game back in order, this is how you win a series. So I think a good sign going forward for Toronto.
I'm putting you on the spot. I know it's your former team. Do you think the Leafs finally do this year?
Honestly, I'm not copping out on this. I couldn't tell you. And this is the intrigue of this series. I'm no different than you guys. I'm the head coach of Detroit Red Wings. I've won 2 Stanley Cups with my former Tampa Bay Lightning. But I'm like you. I'm a fan for this series too. I was excited to do this when the games come around at 6:30. I get those butterflies again. I'm just so intrigued and excited. Well, I'm a fan also. And this is why this is so exciting. You could literally flip a coin on this. And I honestly don't know how this is going to play out.
Well, you got me jacked up for game 4 tonight. Derek, really, really appreciate your time. I'm not kidding, man. You're doing an exceptional job. Great job in Detroit as well in year 1, and appreciate it. We'll talk soon, okay?
All right. Thanks for having me, Nick.
Anytime. That is Derek Lalonde, the head coach of the Detroit Red Wings. What an absolute beauty. I have a couple buddies who are on that team actually and spoke the world of the man. And obviously knowing John Cooper a bit, I've heard nothing but great things. And obviously the insight, just so unique, right? To have that perspective, having been in that room in Tampa for so many years, won those 2 Stanley Cups. Love the answer as well regarding Luke Schenn. Like, you just find out the little details that maybe you don't find out as sort of a casual fan or somebody behind the scenes, right? Even being in media. to have that perspective. So thankful to Derek Lalonde for giving me some time on today's show. And I could tell why people get motivated by Derek Lalonde, whether it be in Detroit or in Tampa. Just, an approachable nature to him, right? Even when you have that conversation, when you watch that conversation and speaking to him, like very, very approachable. And that's exactly what I've heard. Gets the best out of his players, motivates you. And again, so thankful for Derek Lalonde and him coming on this show today. Keep in mind, the Botano wrap-up is presented by Botano.ca. The game starts now, 19 plus. Please play responsibly. So I won't lie, I've been on a bit of a heater, and when everybody says they're on a heater in betting, that's naturally when you lose. But I'm going to try to keep things going. As this series progresses, I expect things to tighten up defensively. And I know we were feeling that way in game 3. It didn't happen that way, a 4-3 OT victory for the Maple Leafs. But I'm going to take a sniff at the under 6.5 in tonight's game, looking at -115, the current odds. I just think it's such an important game in the series. And it goes without saying, maybe that's a bit cliche. Every game in a best of 7 is important. But I think, number one, I'm expecting a bit of a response here from Andrei Vasilevskiy. He has not been good in this series. To this point, as I said earlier, I think Ilya Samsonov has been the better of the two, granted it's just 3 games in. And on top of that, we know how Andrei Vasilevskiy goes as the series goes on, right? So I think you have to keep that in mind. I think just how important this game truly is in terms of being a swing game. Either Toronto will be up 3-1 in the series, or it'll be 2-2 and off to a best of 3, just like last year we go. So with that in mind, I don't expect a lot of offense, and I expect goaltending in this game, Vasilevskiy and Samsonov. So I'm going to take a bit of a sniff here at the under, and hopefully the heater continues. So under 6.5 between the Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning here in Game 4 at Amalie Arena. With that in mind, let's get to the chat. You guys have been fantastic once again today, and I speak for Jay Rosehill. We've just been so excited by this project that we started way back when, I guess in early October, to where it is now. We could not have done it without you guys here on social media, and the chat's been unbelievable here in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So keep the momentum going, just like the Maple Leafs. Patrick writes in, I guess we could win 2, but yeah, he's talking about winning back-to-back road games on the road here in Tampa. And to me, I think that's going to be a big topic of conversation too, is Michael Bunting. Of course, I asked Derek Lalonde about that, and it's tough to make that decision right now because I do think a lot of it hinges upon what happens here in Game 4. Michael Gallus writes in, Uncle Fester. I'm sure he's got that before. And I love that when people just know the nicknames they get. That's automatically what I thought too, some of the nicknames from some of the movies. But what an absolute beauty. Love the insight as well, as many of you did on social media and on YouTube here, about Luke Schenn and what he brings to the table from that perspective with the Maple Leafs. Again, all season long, Rosie's been preaching it, how he thought Luke Schenn was a perfect fit for this team. And so far, so good. Luke Schenn's just been so unbelievable. And again, talk about composure, guys who have been there before. And that's why you go out there and get guys like Ryan O'Reilly, 2019 Conn Smythe Trophy winner, ties the game late, wins the key faceoff to set up the Morgan Riley winner in OT. Luke Schenn, how composed he was leaving the zone in OT, stick handling. Like, it was just, it all came together, it seemed. And I know it's one game, you sort of have to park it and move forward here. But I just think it's really, really impressive, that they put the body of work together and they found a way to win that game, right? Sometimes, more often than not, the Leafs tend not to win those games. They finally found a way, and maybe you feel, maybe you say this year could be a bit different for this Maple Leafs team. Patrick also writes in, Nyes defensively has been great. He does not want to mess up. There's nothing wrong with that. The other thing I've noticed about Matthew Nyes, by the way, he strikes me as a guy who is just so thankful to be in the NHL that you watch him shift in and shift out. He doesn't overstay his welcome. Like, more often than not, he's not out there for 2 minutes. He does like 30, 35 seconds. He gets the hell off onto the next line. And that third line has been quite the revelation, by the way. They've done a tremendous job. And they offer just a different look, right? We talked about the matchup game going into this series, how I would argue that Toronto's got way more depth up front, and I think they're flexing their muscles right now, albeit they were not great in Game 3, right? They found a way to get that job done. I thought, quite frankly, they goalie Tampa, which is so crazy to say when you wonder and see who's on the other end of the ice, and Andrei Vasilevskiy, but Ilya Samsonov really, really stepped up. I'm still looking for that signature game, from a Auston Matthews, from a Mitch Marner. I think quietly Willie Nylander has been producing. John Tavares, I think, was a bit more quiet in Game 3 than he was in Game 2, obviously, with that hat trick. But again, this is the luxury of having so many studs up and down that lineup that every night it could be somebody different in this Stanley Cup playoff run. And so far, Feeling good about this Leafs team. It seems like, well, it was a week ago when they were stomped in game one, 7-3, and the sky was falling. So just want to see that momentum continue on. Sharp like attack rates and Nyes is the real deal. I could not agree more. Again, small sample size, and I asked Derek Lalonde about that. Very same thing, just how impressed we've been with Matthew Nyes early on in his NHL career. What an absolute stallion. And again, he's just brought it, and he's been a difference maker, right? To be that age, coming out of college, to be a difference maker, and I know it's just 2 games in the Stanley Cup playoffs, pretty damn impressive. So, folks, looking forward to tonight's game. Again, I can't thank Derek Lalonde enough for dropping by today. Jay Rosehill, another great installment of 3 Hits with Rosey. I'm not sure if those of you who are subscribed at the Leafs Nation 401, at the Leafs Nation 401, put out a bonus 3 Hits with Rosey on Sunday. It did fantastically. And it was pretty much Rosey just raw after that OT victory. He texted me. He's like, dude, I got to do something. He put it together. We put it up. And you guys responded. Now, I just love these 3 hits features. It sort of fell in our lap. I'm like, what can we do when Jay Rosehill isn't here for the show? And I believe it might have been producer Alex. How about like a 3-hit segment? Former tough guy in the league, love hitting, and it gelled perfectly. And thus 3 Hits with Rosey was born. And he just goes on a couple of rants, 3-4 minutes, and that's what's produced 3 Hits with Rosey. So appreciate Jay for bringing it. He's back in the mix tomorrow. I could tell he's pumped up, and he's looking forward to providing his insight once again, for Game 4 coming up tonight. So thanks to everybody in the chat. Many thanks to producer Alex as well. I'm Nick Alberga. Thanks so much for listening and watching, and enjoy Game 4. Take care.